Welcome to Tales from the Creek. I'm Stan Cole, class of 1987, and today we continue our conversation with Campbell Hall of Famer Brad Fritsch.
Brad, the casual fan really only sees golf from what happens on television. Sometimes they might get out to an event. Usually the final couple of rounds. What are some of the things that most people don't know about being a golf professional?
It's really expensive. So there's a little bit of that going around lately with the PGA Tour versus the LIV stuff. One of the more ridiculous things I've read is that golfers are underpaid. No, they're not. They get paid a lot of money when they play well. But it is expensive to maintain or travel, whatever you want to call it. It's expensive to fund yourself for an entire year. You're looking at six figures to try to go throughout the world and play tournaments, and that's fine. It's on you. It's what you decided to do. But you kind of have to avoid the mindset of, well, I'm already, six figures in the hole, start of the year, now what? I've always thought of golf as a progression. You take certain steps. There's no shortcuts. But being out on the PGA Tour was I couldn't believe I'd gotten there. And I don't think a ton of people think that way. Maybe some do. But there's definitely some different mindsets when you get to the PGA Tour. You have guys who expect to be there, expect to be catered to. My perception being out there was, oh my God, I can't believe I'm out here. This is the best thing in the world. Like, you want to give me a courtesy car for the week? Oh my God, thank you so much. Other guys would stare right through that volunteer and take the keys and drive away and not say thank you. Not everyone, just a few. But it just, we encounter all kinds of different people in all walks of life, but being out playing professional golf in front of people who appreciated how good the players were, it was such a blessing. I could not believe the first year I got to the tour was my rookie year was 2013, so I was 35. So I'd been at it for 13 years, right? So started in 01, 2013 was my first year, and I just couldn't believe it. At the end of 2012, as I was getting my tour card, I tweeted something that was inappropriate, and they asked me to take it down. Actually, the PGA Tour did. There were some curse words, some grateful curse words in my tweet, and they said, please take it down. Whenever you got the 904 area code calling you, that's Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, you knew you were in trouble. Basically that. So that's where the PGA Tour headquarters are. I was like, oh no, what did I do? My rookie year, I was just the whole time looking around, and in retrospect, I was naive, but I was a 35-year-old rookie. That's an old rookie to be out there, right? In any sport. And so I think it was the culmination of 13 years of grinding and finally getting there. And I had an okay year. I made a ton of cuts. But it can feel like a grind when you're out there. Mm-hmm. The mentally taxing part of not just the 4 rounds of golf that you play Thursday to Sunday, but the preparation, the flying there Monday, trying to squeeze in practice rounds Tuesday and maybe Wednesday, and then just, trying to concentrate and pour everything of yourself into a 5-hour round of golf. And then, again, I didn't know it at the time, but the expectations just placed on yourself, by yourself, that is a killer of joy. It truly is. So if you see those, I think it's the Players Tribune, a letter to my younger self, athletes write to themselves. I wish I could go back and just say, as much as corny as it sounds, like, please have fun with it. I appreciated where I was, but I so desperately wanted to do well that it killed a little bit of joy in my first year. I learned how to deal with it better my second. But then, unfortunately, I wasn't playing as well as I did my first year. So that doesn't make a ton of sense that it didn't translate physically, but there was other stuff going on that prevented me from doing so. But I wish, again, a letter to my younger self, like, please try not to take each and every shot as life or death. Please just try to enjoy it as much as you can, and you'll do so much better.
Looking back, 2 top 10s at Torrey Pines, top 10s in the Wyndham and the Canadian Open, a win on the Web.com tour. Are there moments or special memories that stick out for you, Brad, from those years?
Yeah, so my first my best memory, we restarted the event at Torrey Pines on a Monday because we couldn't get all the golf in through Sunday. 2013, I entered the final round second place behind Tiger Woods. Didn't play with him because we just kind of played through the day on Sunday, played as many holes as we could, so we didn't repair from round 3 to 4. So he was behind my group. But Monday morning, we were both on the 8th tee restarting. My group had to go first. And so there were 6 of us. Billy Horschel was one of them. Tiger was one of them. And so I have to hit first. Tiger Woods is on the tee. There's probably, as a par 3, there are probably 15,000 people lining this hole. 14,999 are there to see him, and I think my dad was in the crowd. One was there. My mom and dad were there, so 14,998. That was the oh crap moment. I'd played some good golf up to that point. I made the cut in Hawaii, made the cut at the Palm Springs event, and then Torrey Pines. So this is my 3rd event on the PGA Tour as a rookie. And Tiger's 6 feet from me, watching me hit on this par 3. There's 11 holes left, and at the time I was within like 4 of the lead. Like, oh crap. I like to tell the story. I closed my eyes and I hit it. Like I was not prepared for that moment. I hit a great shot. My putt never touched the hole, but that was kind of the first memory I have of the PGA Tour that sticks out. I top 10 there the next year. That course just suits my game. Even when I was playing poorly, I played that tournament well. I love that course. It's so difficult. It rewards kind of a tough-minded competitor. You can't hit every fairway and green. It's just too hard. And so it was just a place where, hey, I made a par. That's awesome. And a lot of events aren't like that. It's how many birdies can you make? Can you make 25 birdies this week? So that event is special to me. The Wyndham in 2014, I took the lead into the final round. And so final group of a PGA Tour event. Never forget it. My experience in being in the lead or near the lead hasn't always been great. I'll just say I played okay. Other guys, more seasoned guys, played great, and I finished 8th. But a lot of things went not against me. I just could have had a few breaks, and I didn't get them. And I didn't play. Again, I played okay, and I would have had to play exceptionally well to win that event, which would have been a lot to ask. But I'll never forget that pressure combined with, there were 10 guys from my neighborhood who were there watching me. They all had the same shirt on. I had gotten them shirts, the year before. My red, I wore red on Sundays, Ottawa Senators red, we called it. So it was just super special, and to be, an hour and a half from my house in Holly Springs, just an awesome experience. The Web.com event win, which was in 2016, was in the country of Colombia. That was one of the only times where my self-talk turned positive over super important shots near the end to get into a playoff and then to win a playoff. And I was always kind of what can go bad here type of player. Not a great mindset for a golfer. It's just who I am. But in these the couple shots I remember it was the 18th hole both times in regulation in the playoff, I just said to myself, this is why you play, man. Like, bear down, be a man, hit a great shot. And I did a couple times in a row, and I wish I could have brought that forward with me. That was in, like I said, 2016. But that was a special win. I still retain status on that tour to this day because of that. I don't play a ton anymore, but that was to win a major event on a tour is is a huge deal, and so I'll never forget that. And then I guess the Canadian Open in 2014 would be one of my last great memory. I'll never forget it because I wasn't playing great. I was right on the cut line on Friday, playing the 18th hole at the Royal Montreal Golf Course, and I remember the lie on 18 after my tee shot was just so bad. And my caddy and I kind of went through my options, and I just if I can get up to the green, at least we have a chance. And we went through 3 different clubs to choose, and I chose a certain one. I can't remember which club it was, and I got it on the green, and this putt stand was the longest putt you've ever seen made. It was probably 70 to 80 feet. It broke 3 times. It slammed into the back of the hole, popped up in the air, went back into the hole. And the fist pump, I feel like I threw my shoulder out. I fist pumped so hard. And the funniest part of the story is I walked behind the green to, sign my card. There's a scoring trailer. Walked out looking at the computer to see what the cut was going to be. And this was the first wave, so we still had the afternoon wave of scores to come in. Usually pretty easy to project a cut based on Friday afternoon. And my dad walked up, and I said, well, you think that's good enough? And he goes, what? You didn't make that putt, did you? And I said, where were you? He's like, oh, I was off getting ice cream for Mr. Henderson, with my family pass I have. I'm like, oh my God, Dad, you just missed the most epic event or putt that you've ever seen. And so that was super funny. And then after that, I didn't make a bogey on the weekend. I shot 67, 64 and finished 8th or 9th at my National Open was very, very special. So those two kind of things came together. And then my dad's comment was just one of the funniest things I've ever experienced on the golf course. So that was one of the things I'll remember forever.
Brad, who are some of the interesting players that you've met along the way? I mean, I know you could fill that up, but one or two of those that for whatever reason.
So I didn't ever play with I never paired with Tiger, never paired with Phil. I've had a couple of interactions with Phil and interesting. There's so many varying opinions of him. But the 3 times that I kind of interacted with him it was non-golf related. Mm-hmm. And he did things that were generous or very nice that only I would have known about it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. He signed something for me that I left in his locker. He could have tossed it to the side and, not thought about it. He and I were at Quail Hollow together eating breakfast, I think, and he and I were the only 2 people in there, and he goes to each of the dining room workers. There are probably 8 of them, mm-hmm. and he shook their hands and said, "This has been the best food we've had all year. Thanks so much. It's been amazing." I was the only person there, so he's not doing it for anyone. He's not doing it for show. So he just seemed to be a really super guy, mm-hmm. Independent of what anyone else would say of him on the golf course or whatever. I do have 2 kind of funny, it speaks to my talent of evaluating players. I played a ton of practice rounds with Jordan Spieth. He wasn't a tour member. He was getting sponsor exemptions into events, a bunch of sponsor exemptions. He was such a highly regarded player coming out of junior and amateur golf. Mm-hmm. And so we played a ton together in practice rounds. I don't know why. He just happened to be there, and we played a lot together. And after all those practice rounds, I thought, he's all right, but I don't see what the hype is for. And then 3 or 4 years later, he wins, 3 or 4 majors. He's making every putt from outside 25 feet for 2 years straight. Good job, Brad. And then, so this is just very timely. Xander Schauffele just won the PGA mm-hmm. Championship. Xander and I played a ton together, starting in, I can't remember, I think it was 2017 when he first got on tour. Yeah, he was on the web.com in 2015 and 16, I think, something like that. And we've played tons of practice rounds on the web.com and on the PGA Tour. And again, I was always thinking he's all right. I don't think he'll go, to be, a top 20 player in the world. And yeah, he's been top 10 in the world for the last 3 years, and he's won the Olympic gold medal, and now he's a major champion. So, yeah, you're not going to call me a recruiter or a talent evaluator for pro golf.
Brad, tell us about your wife, Megan, how y'all met. Is she a golfer?
She is not a golfer. So in 2005, I made a decision to move to the Raleigh area full time. I would live on and off in the winters with David Mathis, one of the former Campbell players.
Right.
We traveled a lot together, playing mini tours, and then up on both Web.com and PGA Tour. We traveled together as well. But I made a decision to, all right, let's go out on my own, find an apartment, house, whatever, 2005. At the same time, personal life wasn't, exploding with any interest from anybody. And so I joined eharmony.com and went out on a few dates with a few different girls. And then I met my wife. And there's more to the story of meeting her and then saying, no, I don't think this is right. And then crawling back. But anyways, 15 years later, we have 2 kids. My daughter, Hannah, is 15. My son, Jesse, is 11. We live in Holly Springs, which, as I'm sure you recall, back when you were in college, and then
it wasn't even a crossroads when I was in college.
It was not. There was a gas station at the corner of Holly Springs Road and Sunset Lake Road, I think. And that was it. And I think they said the official population back then was 800, let's say. And the demographics are very different. And now it's 40,000 people, and they can't get it to stop growing, and biotech is exploding in the area, and they can't stop building houses. It's a crazy transformation. I don't enjoy the traffic, but I do enjoy the town. It's a great town to raise kids in. The schools are great. So we've been very lucky to and the only reason we live there, Stan, is because my wife's sister lives in the neighborhood, and that's where we bought our first house back in 2007. She said, you're going to be traveling a ton. I'd like to have someone close by.
Right.
So the first house we bought was in the neighborhood because of her sister, who lived there as well. And we're lucky to live where we do. We love it there. We love the area. If I describe it to people, just the Raleigh area in general, it's like it's not too big, but it has everything you need. You don't have major traffic issues. The airport's great to get in and out of. I can't imagine living in a city bigger than, whatever you want to call it, the Triangle, whatever. It's just a great place to live. My daughter just starting to play volleyball. She started in gymnastics as a kid. She's now 5'11", and so that's not conducive to gymnastics. She quit gymnastics about 6 or 7 years ago. She tried riding horses for a bit, so never in a team sport. She just started playing volleyball in the Fuquay area, just the rec, the rec league, and she loves it. And I tried to tell her for years, like, there's nothing like a team sport. Say what you want about golf, and to some extent college golf, it's a team sport, but you're out there by yourself for most of the competition. But a team sport, in my opinion, there's nothing like it. The highs and the lows. Like, you lean on people when you fail, but celebrating with friends and teammates is so awesome. And so she's getting into that and learning about that. And then my son is 11. I've had him in the Raleigh hockey system for about 5 years. He's a rec player. He's a pretty decent player. I love coaching, Stan. I love coaching kids. I love taking kids who I've coached for the last 3 or 4 years and continue to, I use the word draft them, but it's, I choose them from the list when I can, just to continue to have the relationship with them, with their parents. I think that's super important. I don't like turnover. I like being with the same people over and over and seeing how they progress in their hockey game. So I do that. And I also referee hockey. Started that about 4 months ago. I did it as a teenager and a young adult. And I think you went through the rec or travel sporting system. That parents can be tough on officials, and I'm almost 50. I'm 46 years old. I feel like I can get or at least help mentor some young people into knowing how to deal with that type of stuff. And, without officials, there's no travel hockey, there's no travel soccer. Like, you need those people. And the world we live in makes it less and less likely that people want to officiate soccer and baseball and hockey and all that. So I think helping young people, that was my goal. I saw how some of our games were officiated. I saw the training was lacking, and I said, man, I need to help this area just get more young people involved and help them stay involved, because you can get discouraged after a few games or a couple months of doing games. So I enjoy that. It's my kind of exercise, twice a week out on the ice, and then I get on the ice and coach practice as well for my hockey team. So very involved. So I've progressed from the adult rec league that I played my senior year, unbeknownst to Coach Crooks until now, if he listens to Tales from the Creek. But that's my life right now. And then, of course, you mentioned Red Rooster Golf. We started that about 3 years ago. It's a direct-to-consumer golf company. We specialize in golf gloves, and we have a number of accessories as well. But I run the U.S. portion of that business, so shipping, receiving, distribution, all that stuff. So that's my life, Stan. I don't play a ton of golf at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I played plenty last year,
Mm-hmm.
but in 2024, it's been since January since I picked up any clubs. So it's there's a lot going on, and I don't know. Sometimes you just need a break.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. and people have shared this with me over time, and I'm about 10 years ahead of you. 14 years older, and my kids are 10 or 12 years older than yours. But we all go through seasons, and in the fall you're harvesting, in the winter you're doing things to prepare for the spring. In the spring you're planting, in the summer things are growing. So it's all different, and it doesn't mean you're not going to get back to certain things and certain times in life. And so that's interesting to hear that. And I love the fact, Brad, that you're involved and see the need, youth sports coaching and refereeing. I've been on both sides of those. Mm-hmm. At the time when I first started here at Campbell, my first 2 summers, we didn't have enough money to rub nickels together. Claudia was back in school, and a guy on the baseball team ran the rec league over in Lillington and said, "Hey, you want to work 2 nights a week and make $100 a week calling Little League baseball games?" I said, "I've never called a Little League base." He says, "That's okay. You don't have to be certified or anything like that." So we'd walk out there in our shorts and T-shirts, and the first thing I had to do was call balls and strikes, and I'd never done it before. And calling balls and strikes for an 11-year-old was difficult. And then to have people screaming at you, parents, and then to have parents, now most of them, obviously, it's like everything in life. There's about 20% of the group that makes them think unpleasant for the other 80%.
Right.
But to see what that did to some kids and the joy that they took from them is like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. The pressure that they feel, the calls, when all the kids really want to do is get out there, have fun, and be together. Yeah. And if they made contact, they were excited, and somebody's patting them on the helmet if they grounded out to the second baseman. And that means a lot. I'm afraid that people who haven't done that, I think, I believe that somewhere, somehow, everybody should do some sort of service to someone else, whether it's civil service or building something, whether it's military service, something that you do that, everybody's got to do. So everybody can kind of maybe get an understanding. I think in life, if you're going to sign your kids up for rec sports, you need to put the whistle around your neck.
Oh yeah.
Or you need to and be a referee, or you need to coach or help out some way to understand what that other side, and to feel that parent hollering at you when maybe you've raised your voice at a coach, or because you didn't like the way your 8-year-old was treated or something like that. I think everybody can sit in someone else's chair, but I'm gonna jump down. Sorry for my soapbox moment there. Brad, as everybody in the golf world knows, the U.S. Open's coming back to Pinehurst next month in June, and the Open's really an incredible event. one that any professional or amateur golfer with a 0.4 handicap index may enter. In fact, more than 10,000 golfers entered local qualifiers this year, and about half of the 156-player field at Pinehurst will be filled through the qualification process. Tell us about your path to the 2015 Open at Chambers Bay in Washington.
Yeah, so I actually first qualified for the U.S. Open in 2006.
Mm-hmm.
It was at Wingfoot. That would be one that I would describe as I'm very happy I qualified, but it was kind of my, I guess it was my first PGA Tour event, I believe,
mm-hmm.
PGA Tour level event, and I was not prepared for it. Eyes wide open, just looking around. Oh my God, they're giving us stuff. Look at all the stuff I'm getting. Look at all the stuff I'm carrying to my courtesy car that's free. I was
6 years out of Campbell, right?
6 years out of Campbell, had not progressed to the Nationwide or Web.com tour yet, so I was coming off of the Canadian tour to play the U.S. Open. A wonderful experience. I'll never forget it, but not prepared for it. So the way that the U.S. Open qualifying works is there are probably, let's say, 80 to 100 local qualifying sites. And locally here, you would go to Duke usually has one. There's usually one in Pinehurst somewhere. There's one at River Landing in Wallace near Wilmington. Usually about an 80-player field at each one, and they'll take 3, 4, 5 guys that progress to what's called the sectionals. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a lot smaller number of sectionals. I think there's usually 10 to 12. Mm-hmm. And those fields also vary. Sometimes there's 40 guys for one spot. There are a number of sectionals that are close to PGA Tour events the week before or the week after. So the ones that I would always go to were the sectional that was after Memorial. Mm-hmm. So at Muirfield Village in Ohio, they would have a U.S. Open sectional the Monday after that tournament ends. And so there would be a ton of PGA Tour players there. And what they do with those fields is they expand them, they make them large, 120 players, but they'll take more qualifiers from them. So usually 16, 17. And so my theory, and I think it's correct, is that the more players that qualify, the more likely you are to play well and qualify. If you go to a small one, a 40-player site for one spot, you can play the best golf of your life, but one guy can beat you. Mm-hmm. But if you play really good golf, 15 to 17 players aren't going to beat you. So that was my theory, and it worked out twice. So in 2006, I qualified in New Jersey. That was actually the sectional where Michelle Wee went.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a zoo, Stan. It was a zoo. She missed by a bunch of shots. Maybe, she missed by 6 or 7 shots. She performed admirably. But I'll never forget this. I was on my 36th hole. So you play 36 holes in one day.
Right.
It's a long day. They call it the longest day in golf. On my 36th hole, I believe I'm 6 under for the day. And I cold topped a 3-wood off of the tee. So it advanced maybe 50 yards. And I'm thinking, oh crap, this is not good. Because I figured I was in position. Again, we had cell phones back then, but not live scoring. Mm-hmm. You kind of had to guesstimate what the qualifying number is going to be. And so there was a creek up. It was a par 4. It was a creek up where you'd hit your drive. So I laid up to that, hit it on the green, made a bogey, come in. I'm in a 5-for-1 playoff. So I'd bogeyed that hole to get into a playoff. If I made par, I would have been straight through. And so I thought, great, this is just great. Actually, a girl who went to Campbell for a couple of years, Jacqueline Sanders, she played on the golf team. She was caddying for me at the time. And I got in the playoff, and on the first playoff hole, so there's 5 of us walking down this par 5, and there's a ton of people watching. It's great theater. And we all had to lay up on the par 5, and we all had our shots on the green. I hit a really good shot to maybe 6 feet, and this guy cans a 40-footer. I'm like, come on, man. This is... I had it all planned. This is why in match play, you always expect your opponent to make his shot.
Right.
Don't be surprised. Well, I was surprised. So I managed to wiggle that putt in to tie him, and there's 2 of us on the next hole. Sudden death, winner goes to the U.S. Open. And I had a choice between a 3-wood and a driver on the tee. And I said, I am not hitting that 3-wood again based on what just happened 2 holes ago. There is no chance. And I take this wild swing and hit it clear onto the hole that I had just played. But I was okay. And while I was trying to figure out what my next shot was going to be, I was over by my ball. My caddy said, holy cow, did you see what he just did? And he airmailed the green. The pin was at the front. He airmailed it over the green, like a shot you wouldn't expect him to hit, right? By the time he had played 5 shots, I was laying 2 on the green. So I could 3-putt and still make it into the U.S. Open. Right. Easy. I ended up making like the 12 or 15-foot putt or whatever it was, but just so grateful that this guy made a mess of, and I didn't have to deal with any more pressure, basically. So I qualify for the U.S. Open. It was a fantastic event. It was actually, I think it was the U.S. Open, I think it was right after Tiger Woods' dad had passed away, and he missed the cut. He played really poorly. It was a weird week. There was a year that +5 won the tournament, so you could see how tough that Wingfoot played. You fast forward to 2015. I was in Cleveland on the Web.com tour and drove over to the Columbus sectional, so not that far. Mm-hmm. And again, big field, a lot of people qualify, 16, 17 players. I played just 2 really solid rounds and was in comfortably. But I'll never forget this. On the 18th hole, so with my 36th hole, last hole of the day, I hit it on the green, and my caddy walked over to the scoreboard about 20 yards away behind the green, and he was looking like, okay, what's the number? What's going to get in? And he comes back, and he read all my putts for me. Like, he was the best green reader I've ever seen in my life, and so I relied on him quite a bit. So I said, Jeff, what do you got? And he goes, just get it down there. And I turned around and I said, you've never said that before in your life. And he said, are you understanding what I'm saying? And I said, yeah, we need to 2-putt. He's like, yes, okay. So, I mean, I would have preferred something more specific, like, left edge, don't hit it past the hole, something like that. But we were comfortably in, and we went to Chambers Bay, which, if anyone remembers that U.S. Open, it was kind of an anti-U.S. Open. It was in an old quarry. Mm-hmm. Everything was brown. Typically, you think about, green, lush grass, U.S. Open, mm-hmm. thick rough, and this was a complete departure. Everyone complained about the greens that week. So I'd already played on the PGA Tour for 2 years before that, right? 13 mm-hmm. and 14. So this is I'm more comfortable in this setting. I'm adapted to it. I've learned. And I birdied, I think, 16 and 17, and I made the cut by 1 or 2 shots. Mm-hmm. And it was just a fun week. It was, again, it was an odd week because everyone was trashing the USGA because of the condition of the course or the greens. And my thought was, everyone's complaining. You just think that they're amazing, like greens, and do your best. And I putted so well, Stan. Like, I don't think I missed a putt inside 6 feet that week. And people were, 3-putting from 8 feet. Like, it was kind of, it was kind of one of those, what you think is true is going to happen. And so I tried to keep myself out of that mindset. It was a super fun week. It was a very unique golf course. I can't remember if they're going back there or not, but it's quite a fascinating place. Chambers Bay is. If anyone's a big golfer and they take a trip out to the West Coast, mm-hmm. it's Tacoma, Seattle area. It's worth it. It's really cool.
The Fighting Camel Club empowers student athletes to lead with purpose on and off the field. Over the past 3 years, donations to the FCC have helped fund scholarships, facility enhancements, health and wellness improvements, and the greatest needs of the athletics department. With our move to the CAA, the need for your support has never been greater. Memberships begin at just $100 and can get you access to exclusive merchandise and seating. Head to GoCamels.com and hit the Give button.
a few years later, Campbell's men's golf team was able to play in a collegiate event out at Chambers Bay, and Matt Moot reminded me that you sent along hole-by-hole notes for the team.
Yeah, I remember
What kind of, what might have been some of the things that you might have shared with the team in their preparation?
So there's a lot of visual fear that the course is built on, and you just kind of have to hit over it. Don't be worried about it. There's certain spots where it's like, if you're in this bunker near this green, you have no chance. Just don't do that. Like, play away from it. It's very, but again, it's very visually intimidating, but at the same time, it's not, depending on what condition you get it in, it can be very firm and fast, like the U.S. Open. I imagine that the Campbell team played it a little bit more benign. It was probably green. They allowed it to grow. But again, it's just to steer clear of all the visual intimidation, because in the end, it was pretty accommodating off the tee. Like, you could miss it right, left, whatever. It was just into the greens. You just had to avoid certain bunkers that were, I don't want to call them death, but they were like auto bogey or double bogey. You could make a mess of your round through that. So as I recall, that's what I was kind of preaching to Matt. I remember one reason why people didn't like it was hard for spectators to see certain holes. And I remember it was the 11th, 12th tee box. My parents, again, they always followed me. And I told my mom on the 12th tee box, I'm like, all right, I'll see you on 15. Because you couldn't see the entire 12th hole as a spectator. The 13th, if you wanted to walk, if you didn't stop in the luxury box area, you had to walk around to the next hole. It was very, it wasn't spectator friendly, which is one reason why a bunch of people didn't like it. But I remember that part of it too. It was, again, very unique golf course. I don't regret playing it. Gosh, it was super fun. Made the cut. Had a blast there.
Brad, in a few weeks, the best golfers in the world are going to converge on the Sandhills of North Carolina and Pinehurst number 2. What is so special about that course?
It's so hard, Stan. And they've made a transformation. I mean, I've played it twice, and one before the restoration and one after. And they're completely different courses. It used to be, you miss the fairway, you're in this long rough. It's very penal. It's tough to get it to the green. Now they give you a chance. They basically removed all the rough and replaced it with this waste bunker like sand. And then there's all this, they call it love grass, tufts of grass that stick up, and they let it grow, 3-4 feet high in the air, but in pockets. That's not, traditional rough. And so, obviously designed by Donald Ross, one of the great golf course architects. I think it's over 100 years old, I'm sure. But it just presents such a unique challenge once you get to the greens. They're tabletop greens that fall off in all directions. It's, if a green is 6,000 square feet in size, the usable portion is probably half that. They're just so, and U.S. Open speed just accentuates the difficulty of the greens. So I do look forward to watching the U.S. Open. I had put my application in to try because it was so close, and then as the local qualifier came, it was at Duke. I just thought in good conscience, I'm like, what am I doing? I haven't played golf in 4 months. There's no point. Like, what is the point here? So I just withdrew it and let someone else play. I never thought it would come to that. Honestly, Stan,
right.
The U.S. Open was so close. I thought, man, what a great opportunity. But it's one of those things where I haven't worked at my game for so long. I was always, I became a hard worker. I wasn't when I got to Campbell. I wasn't in my first years of professional golf. But I met my swing coach in 2007, and we kind of agreed on a path. But now that there's nothing to kind of work towards, me playing golf just doesn't compute at the moment. But like you said, it could be just a season. But U.S. Open wise, it's such a cool property. It's a great host for a U.S. Open because there are so many other courses that they can use for what they need at a U.S. Open, which is merchandising and and parking, and there's 6 courses I think on the actual resort, so they can use those for driving range too. Like there's so many parts of a U.S. Open that I don't think, if you haven't been to one, you don't realize. So as an example, at Wingfoot, they have an east and a west course. We played, I think, the west course. The east course was all parking, merchandise tent. The entire golf course gets taken up by other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so you need that space. You can't just throw a U.S. Open in Keith Hills one day and say, yep, we'll just have the tournament there. It needs to accommodate 156 players. Like, nope, you need it for 40,000 people. And the requisite, what that entails, food, merchandising, all the vendors that have to come in, they stay the week, all that stuff. It's just that the property is so big at Pinehurst that it's going to be an amazing host.
You have a prediction of a couple of players and maybe a dark horse?
So Xander Schauffele would have been one of them anyway. He plays U.S. Open so well. He shot one of the records last year at the L.A. Country Club. He shot 62. Shot 62 last week as well. Just crazy golf he's been playing. I would think that Brooks Koepka would be maybe one of them, just a guy who embraces the difficulty of everything. And then, Scotty Scheffler, if he stays out of prison, is going to be he's so good, Stan. I don't, and everything about him is so, you would never teach what you see him do, right? His footwork is something I've never seen before, and yet he's the best, most consistent ball striker in the world. It's like, maybe we should be teaching that. I don't know how you would, but I've run across Scotty a few times, just the nicest guy in the world. So humble, such a good guy. I would think that he continues his streak of at least contending. But those 3 guys, yeah, Koepka, Schauffele, and then Scotty Scheffler. Dark horse-wise, gosh, maybe I'll go Canadian on this one. I'll be biased. Corey Connors has won a few tournaments on the PGA Tour. Wonderful ball striker. And this might be the test of a ball striker where it's like, you just have to get it on the green. After that, it's not like it's about making birdies at Pinehurst. It's about making pars, tons of pars, right? So, there might be a little less pressure on putting if you're hitting a ton of greens. We'll see if that's even possible at Pinehurst to hit a ton of greens. I don't know. It just depends, right? I remember I played number 2 about, I think it was 2 or 3 winters ago. It was February. A friend of mine was down from Canada. He said, hey, come on and play. I said, all right, as long as you pay. But I tried to play the back tee for the first 10 or 11 holes. And, they're talking about 7,800 yards, and it was February, so you know what it's like wet, kind of chilly, gross. And after 10 or 11 holes, I'm like, this is no fun. Like, I'm hitting driver and hybrids into par 4s, and you can't hold those greens, right? With hybrids. So I moved up a tee box, and all of a sudden it's 7,200 yards and manageable. And now I'm hitting 7 irons in and 8 irons and 6 irons. Still a great test, but manageable. So I'm assuming, they'll tip it out at the max yardage, but at the same time it's June, and so it's going to be, firm and fast U.S. Open style. So I think the players will be okay. But again, the greens are so small in terms of playability. It's just a great test. I look forward to watching it. Hopefully we get something better than Martin Keimer won by 10 shots, which is crazy in itself. Sometimes I think that people forget about some of those great performances. Like, he's kind of not on the radar anymore, but 10 shots in the U.S. Open is that's like winning, the NBA championship. You sweep and everybody, you win every game by 40 points. Like, that's insanity. It really is.
Brad, people that know you or who follow you on social media know that you're a big sports fan. The Ottawa Senators didn't even form until you were a teenager, right?
That's right.
How did that start with you? Were you a Maple Leafs fan before that, or
not even close, Stan? Not even close. So honestly, as a kid growing up in Ottawa, we would have Hockey Night in Canada. Was 8 p.m. every Saturday. It was kind of their staple show, and it would always be the Leafs. I wasn't a Leafs fan. I was an Oilers fan, Wayne Gretzky, but the Leafs were kind of like not my second team. I wouldn't cheer for them, but they were always on Saturdays, so you would just get to know all the players. They were never good back then.
That's right.
When the Senators started their franchise in 1992-93, the expansion rules were so penal. Like, the team got every team's worst player, basically. And so they were a bad franchise for the first 4 or 5 years. They've changed that now. They spend so much money on these teams, acquiring these expansion teams, that they have to give them something to look forward to. So all of a sudden, these new expansion teams are actually really competitive. The rules have changed. So the Ottawa was not good for a while, but they were my team. They became very good in the late 90s, early 2000s, and funnily enough, the Leafs were the team that they couldn't get past.
Wow.
Yeah, it was like the Rangers and the Canes, basically, right? Like, they would win. They won the President's Trophy, the league points title, a couple years, and they just could not get past the rugged, playoff-tested Leafs. And so that was frustrating. When I got to the PGA Tour, actually, they were one of my sponsors.
How did that come about? That's so interesting.
So I don't remember what the circumstance was, but they needed good publicity. I think they might have been in the middle of a lockout, like the league was in a lockout. And this was November of 2012. I was about to get my tour card. It was almost impossible that I couldn't going into the last event of the year. And one of the reporters from the Ottawa Sun, who was an initial supporter of mine, sponsorship-wise, he came up with the idea. He said, I know this guy, Jeff Kyle. He's the director of marketing for the Senators. I bet you they would love publicity when you get your tour card to have your picture with the Sens logo on your bag on the front page of the paper, because the NHL and the Senators are kind of taking it in the teeth right now. It was bad. Like, millionaires fighting over money, right?
Right. Sure.
So he brought down a bag panel. They're interchangeable with zippers on the big tour bags. He brought down a panel that they printed. It said Brad Fritsch and then the Ottawa Senators logo. So I get my tour card. We switch out the panels, and on the front page of the Ottawa Sun the next day, I think it said something like "Look out, Tiger." Obviously, not that much of a threat, but it was a big deal. Nobody from Ottawa had ever gotten their PGA Tour card before. Nobody has since then, and so it was I wouldn't say they were guilted into the sponsorship, but the press was good. And so the following 2 years, they were on my bag, on my shirt. I was delighted. I mean, these are not my heroes because I'm an adult, but these are guys who I, watch. It's my fandom. Just this is my team, right? And this is super funny. So after my top 10 at Torrey Pines, when we talked about with Tiger Woods, a couple weeks later, they had me drop a puck at center ice, which was always, that's on my bucket list. And it happened. It was a Rangers game, Rangers Senators. And after the game, I got to talk to some of the players, and there was this defenseman, a young kid, probably 21. His name was Patrick. And typical, like, he's not from California, but he was California surfer dude, right? And he's like, okay, so you're just at Torrey Pines. Where do you go next? And I said, Pebble Beach. And he said, oh, man, that's so cool. I'm like, you're 21, playing in the NHL. Like, this is my dream. You're living my dream. And apparently I'm living yours. Like, we can switch if you'd like. But it's funny. Like, all hockey players want to be golfers, and all golfers, Canadian golfers, want to be hockey players. It's funny. But that was also one of the memories I'll never forget. Center ice with my daughter. She was probably 4 at the time. Yeah, it was awesome.
Brad, I always like to wrap up a few general questions when I talk to my friends in golf. Who makes up your ideal foursome?
So they ask this on your PGA Tour bio. When you get to the tour, you fill this stuff out. And at the time, I said my dad, Payne Stewart, and George W. Bush. And I don't know if I can come up with another foursome like that, but that was, at the time, that was kind of my, it's not for political reasons, it's just I think he's a fascinating guy, and he had to deal with a ton during his presidency, so I'll stick with that.
Well, and he's proven to be, an extremely likable person, it seems, from what we can tell.
Yep.
You know, passing the candy over to Michelle Obama on camera and all this. I mean, things like that. You know, he just seems to be a decent dude whose family happens to have a whole lot of money.
Indeed.
Most difficult course you've played?
There are two. So the National Golf Club of Canada is in Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
and Butler National is in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And not coincidentally, they have the same designer. It's Tom and George Fazio. Everyone has heard of Tom Fazio in the golf world, but George Fazio, I think, is his uncle, and they worked together on a few courses. Those two are the hardest I've ever played.
What's your favorite course?
I've got a top five. I've played Augusta National one single time.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good, just fantastic. I love it. There's stuff that if you haven't played a round of golf on, or at least been there to watch the Masters, that you would be surprised about. I love Pebble Beach, not necessarily because it's the best golf course, but the views from number 3 through 11 is some of the, or 3 through 10 is just the best you'll ever see. Harbor Town in Hilton Head Island, different, but just a great golf course, I think. Oakmont. Oakmont is my favorite golf course in the world. I've played there a couple of times just as a guest. Never in a tournament, but I played there 2 summers ago and then 3 summers ago. Just a fantastic place. I just love it. And then a place I played on, I'll call it vacation. I went over to Ireland to visit an old teammate, David Carroll, in the winter. It was over Christmas of 2000, I think, and we played a couple rounds of golf, which was a big mistake because it was really cold. But there's a place over there called the European Club, and it is the absolute hardest golf course I've ever played. Now, you asked that question before. This was in the winter. It was snowing. It's hard to tell. But it's a great course. I love it. So that rounds out the top 5. The European Club in just outside of Dublin.
Favorite club? Golf club?
Oh yeah, interesting. That's varied throughout my career. I would probably say the 60-degree wedge.
Okay.
Now, yeah, it's great, Stan. Like I've known guys who are terrified of certain clubs, mostly amateur golfers, of course. Like one guy growing up, he's like, I can't hit my 7-iron. I go from 6 to 8. There's no point in my 7-iron. Like, you might want to get that specific club looked at. There might be something wrong with them. They're supposed to match, you know. I'll tell you, I played an entire year with a 3-wood in my bag, but there was no purpose to it because I would never pull it out. I couldn't hit a 3-wood for a year on the PGA Tour. Crazy. I just couldn't find the right match. I was never a big fitter and like club fitting and all that. I just couldn't find a 3-wood, Stan, and it probably hurt me. I'm sure it did. There was in the 2010 Canadian Open. It was in Vancouver. It was on the 36th hole. We're on the 9th hole specifically, but it's, the hole that you finish your round on. After 2 rounds, we're on the cut line, have to make par. And my comment to my caddy was, it's not driver, and I'm terrified of my 3-wood, so I'm going to hit my hybrid. And it turned a long hole into an even longer hole, right? I did make par. It worked out okay, but after the round, he's like, you got to figure this out. You can't have this gap, right? You hit your driver 300 yards and your hybrid 240. You need something at 270. This is ridiculous. Like, you're trying to play at the highest level. What are you doing? Right. So, but lob wedge would be my favorite club.
Brad, what's the best piece of advice golf-wise you've ever heard?
And I've ever heard. See, I thought my expectation one was pretty good. I don't like cliches. The never up, never in. Give it a chance. I'm going to turn it around on you, Stan. The putts that drive me nuts, especially in Ryder Cups, that you see, they have to make this putt, and it ends up going 12 feet past the hole.
Right.
Guess what? That putt never had a chance.
Sure.
If it hit the hole, it's not going in anyway. I think sometimes our our goal of giving something a chance really actually hinders us. The best piece of advice I've ever gotten is keep it as stress-free as you can. I was a stressed out player. My mind would race, and the longer that I played, the better I got at just trying to keep everything in front of me, whether I hit driver or hybrid off the tee. I wanted to be able to hit my next shot from a position of comfort. So I didn't want to reach that bunker, the possibility of hitting in that bunker. I didn't want to reach the rough here. I would lay back, and technically this goes against kind of the golf analytics nowadays. They say bomb driver everywhere. I didn't want to hit from the rough. So I gave myself more chances from the fairway than most people as my career went on. I'm told that was incorrect, but to me, I fashioned out a decent career out of something I never would have thought possible. So that was my best advice, was keep it as stress-free as possible. You can't force birdies. You know, people talk about, he has to shoot 62 today. Well, guess what? Like, those rounds come about once a year, and it's not like you did something on purpose for that to happen. It's, you know, the ball goes through the hoop from 3 for no reason other than you keep shooting. Like, you just have to keep playing. You can't force. You can't do anything different.
Finally, Brad, can you put into words how much Campbell University and this Buies Creek community have impacted your life?
Well, it's where I got my start, right? It's where I learned to play golf as I didn't learn it as a career here, but I learned it as maybe you call it a vocation. You know, when you're in an athletics program in college, yes, you're going to class, you're trying to do the best you can, but the sport is your vocation for 4 years if you choose to stay for 4 years. So that's how I learned how to be the first step to being a professional. Obviously, I took that step right after college. It wouldn't be the same if Coach Crooks still wasn't here, if that makes sense. The fact that he's still here makes it extra special. I always enjoy seeing him. He hasn't changed a ton. He looks pretty much the same as he did from what I remember, 30 years ago. He looks pretty much the same guy. So do you, by the way. I hope I do too. But the transformation of this place is really special. I know it was probably a little bit different when you were here in the mid-'80s than it was in the mid-'90s when I was here, but it's changed so much for the better. I love taking my kids to the basketball games. I don't get to as many football games as I should. The fact that we have football still blows my mind, because it would have been a pipe dream back in the late 90s, right? The Hall of Fame is truly special. Every time I go to a basketball game, my daughter, she's 15, and you know what 15-year-old girls are like, but she goes and finds the brick, right? She loves it. So I love it. It's a fun place, man. It's, starting out my freshman year, I don't think I ever would have thought that because of the emotions that I was feeling, wanting to go home. But there's not a coincidence that I live half an hour from here, right? It's not. It's a fun place. It always holds a special place in my heart. Some of my teammates are still around. Tim Crooks, Ryan Ketron, Kip Daly. We all live within about 10 minutes of each other. So it's, I always tell people, I'm in the portion of life now where my friends' kids are going to college and they all want to go to, I want to go to South Carolina for the football games, and I want to go here and I want to go there. Wherever you go, you're going to meet the best friends you'll ever have, right? Like, you don't know who your friends are going to be at South Carolina. You'll have the same type of friends at Campbell or wherever you go. Like, it doesn't matter. You'll find your best friends for the rest of your life, right? So, it doesn't matter where you go to college. The kids think that they want the big experience, but the intimate experience of Campbell, like, there's something super special. I don't know what it's like now, but sitting in the, Dr. Schroeder
Right.
government class with 25 people was awesome. Like, you're not going to learn more in a class of 300. You're going to learn less. So I think those experiences are, I'm glad that I had them. How about that? Like, I wouldn't know it any other way because this is what I experienced, and I'm super thankful for it.
I'm Stan Cole, and our guest today on Tales from the Creek has been former Campbell and professional golf standout Brad Fritsch. Thank you, Brad, for sharing your Tales from the Creek.
You got it.